Within the recruiting funnel, making your recruiters more efficient and better on the phone is kind of your number one place you need to look.
Right.
If you're able to contact a lead within 5 minutes of them converting, chance of contacting them increases by 900%.
It's a fine line. You don't want to be too difficult and give them a full app on a mobile phone. They'll never do it.
And welcome back to Digging Deep. We're all the way to episode 4. This is months later. I don't believe you. Anyway, so we have Aaron Mowrey back with us.
Thank you for having me again.
We circled back around months later.
10 pounds lighter.
Does this look like a little weight to you?
Yeah, I keep thinking that I'm going to wow everybody with my dramatic transformation from one episode to the next. It's not happening. In episode 1, we talked about leads. And the crux of the whole conversation was that most people, I feel, in my limited knowledge, very often fleets tend to think of what is my cost per lead, and then what vendor provides me the best cost per lead. That's where I want to focus my efforts. Did I make that up? Or do you at least run into that from time to time?
We do run into it. I think it's gotten a whole lot better.
Okay.
And I think most of the folks who would be watching this would say 4 or 5 years ago, they were probably in that boat too.
Right.
Some maybe still, but most folks do look beyond just that. It's still a factor, but it is, I would say that it's gotten better.
What is starting to replace cost per lead?
Cost per hire, everyone looks at that.
Okay.
They are going to look at, everyone. I don't like using those terms. Everyone, no one, always, never. Most look at that.
Right.
Now, nailing that down, the whole attribution piece, that's a whole different thing, especially with inbound phone calls. And a lot of people have a difficult time tracking a call all the way to the hire.
All right. Maybe something for another episode.
That's a good point.
I know.
So what are the dangers of looking at cost per lead or focusing on cost per lead?
Focusing too much?
Too much, I would say.
There still is this stigma that I just need leads sometimes just to keep the wheels turning and, pushing the ball down the field. It's not always the best move.
Did somebody's stomach just growl? I thought we just went to lunch.
Lay off me, I'm starving.
I have not eaten yet.
Me either. No, actually, I got a protein bar, so I'm good. Okay, so we were talking about dangers of cost per lead. And I have heard that. When they say they just want leads to keep them busy, what would your response to somebody that says that? They want their lead volume at a certain amount so that their recruiters are busy. What do you say to that?
We want them to be more efficient. So it's just a tough tug of war, push and pull. There is value in, if I can just make contact with more folks, then I have an opportunity to close more. But it's, I think we talked about it in the first one with McKinsey. The data says that that's not the case, that the more you spend on cheap leads doesn't convert to more hires. So again, it's a fine line.
Yeah, we said there was a 0.26 correlation. This study was probably done a year or two ago, but we looked at, I don't remember how many. It was a lot of campaigns. It was like 600 campaigns over the course of 6 months or something. And in that time period, cost per lead had a 0.26 correlation to cost per hire, which is essentially no correlation. So obviously it affects it some because you would have to use cost per lead in your equation for calculating your cost per hire. But there wasn't a correlation between a fleet that did really good on cost per lead or cost per lead and their cost per hire.
In the current market that we're in, third, fourth quarter, 2020.
Yep.
Cost per lead has gone up significantly just because of competition and not as many drivers looking. And I have seen fleets where their lead to hire ratio has stayed the same, but because their cost per lead is up $30, $40, cost per hire has been affected. So does that make sense? It's
Yep.
still a factor,
Right.
but it's probably not the first thing you want to look at.
When the supply of drivers is greater, this is not scientific, but it seems to me when the supply of drivers is greater, then cost per lead has less an effect on your overall cost per hire.
When the supply of drivers is greater. Yeah, that's true. That is a true statement. And again, once you get a campaign dialed in and we know what channels are working, we talked about keywords last month.
What do you mean by dialed in? Explain that.
We talked about negative keywords last time and just what budgets are working in specific channels. You try to pour as much budget into a channel that's working as you can before you diversify. There's no need in having 9 different channels if 4 work well, and with lead cost being low and lead to hire ratio being good. So that's what I mean. Once you optimize and you're able to dial a campaign in, then cost per lead probably becomes more important.
Okay, that makes sense. It seems that most people, and would you agree that kind of the overarching thing that everybody's looking at is cost per hire?
Yes.
And that's probably the most important thing to look at when we're looking at cost is just cost per hire.
I mean, if I can put myself in the director of recruiting shoes and they either have weekly or monthly executive meetings, that's what they have to report on.
Okay.
How much budget did you spend and how many people did you hire?
So if I'm looking at managing my cost per hire or keeping it down, what are kind of the most important items that I should be looking at and monitoring? Or you can give them to me.
I mean, there's
Maybe
a
the
few.
Top 5.
Lead to hire ratio would be the first one that comes to mind. But even getting more granular, it's time is money. So how much time is it taking? How many recruiters do you have? Full app to hire ratio. I mean, there's quite a few things that a good partnership. I wouldn't want to put this all on the director of recruiting. They've got so much going on, but a good partner should be able to help them execute that well with 5 or 6 touch points, but 5 or 6 different items to consider. Lead to hire ratio would be the first.
So we could look at lead to hire ratio across campaigns, across vendors, across lead types, across channels. How many ways do you think we should break that down?
I don't have a perfect answer to that. I mean,
would be no way of knowing.
The more granular you can get, the better. I've even seen some clients that break down lead to hire ratio by recruiter. So you look at lead type by recruiter. This recruiter closes calls better. This recruiter closes forms better. And to be able to change your round robins in your ATS system based off of that. So it can go pretty deep.
When you're talking to fleets, how many fleets are getting that granular of looking at lead to hire
by recruiter?
By recruiter.
10%, or I mean, it's not enough. But again, it's not easy. So
how many would stand to benefit from it? Would you say?
Again, if you had a good partner, to me, you just need multiple eyes on that.
Right.
If you're looking at 7 or 8 different data points like that, that's got to be overwhelming to one director who's probably juggling multiple hats. So I think getting as granular as possible would be great. You just need somebody to help you to decipher it and keep an eye on it. And that's what we are trying to get to.
Yep.
It's difficult even on our end. We've got 5 or 6 people at any given time helping manage a campaign, and there's a lot that goes into that.
In the infamous efficiency formula, which I did a video on, we said that if we look at the entire funnel, the area of improvement, which is really, if you look at you're looking at lead to hire ratio in the efficiency formula, and the area that provided the most improvement on your lead to hire would be your recruiter's ability to get interested drivers to actually get scheduled for orientation. Talked to versus scheduled for orientation rate. All right. Obviously, that you're limited there. You can't max out your potential there because you're dealing with people. Where's the second place I would look besides just my recruiters being better on the phone?
Well, I still think we could play in that realm. Like we want to help.
Right.
And part of that is monitoring inbound phone calls. There's tons of data. I wish I had it in front of me.
So do I.
But there is a ton of data that says phone calls that are 10 minutes or longer have a much higher show rate in orientation. And again, there's a correlation between a 10 and 15-minute phone call and a full app being taken over the phone. So
Right.
there is something you can monitor there that says, I've seen some fleets that do a great job. They have a minimum requirement of all their recruiters to take 2 phone apps a day.
Surely you can't be serious.
I'm not making that up. That's a real example. 2.
Yeah.
So that by the end of the week, each recruiter minimum to keep their job is 10 phone apps per recruiter.
Okay.
And we can see the data that says it's made a big difference. So that's a piece, but I guess to your question, you want to go, what's the next step?
Yeah, because I mean, I think everyone knows that, and like you said, we are doing stuff here at Random Rally to help people with the train the recruiters better, look at the data better. But there's obviously, even though that's the most impactful, there are other impactful places you could focus. So we could look at just lead volume. You could look at lead quality, and then you could look at contact rate. So how many of the leads I get am I able to contact? Of those 3 things, where are you headed next?
Well, I think it does go to how many leads they're getting per recruiter. It does play into contact rate and how quickly, I mean, that whole speed to lead, but how many leads is a client buying
Right.
per recruiter? And that whole snowball effect, that 20 leads today, and then I get 20 more tomorrow, but I'm also still working 17 of the 20 from yesterday.
Right.
Just building. And
Which we said, according to our data, 400 to 600 is kind of the optimum inbound responses per recruiter.
the number I have in my head is about 125 a week. Is that right?
Yep.
125 a week
Yep.
per recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
Which, what's that by 5? 25 a day? Yep.
Yep.
That is correct.
25 a day or
25 a day.
And I've had some clients that argue that. They feel like they can handle more. The problem is when they handle more, they end up only trying twice before they move that lead to unable to contact or...
Right. And what we were saying earlier about the speed to lead, because I don't think we mentioned that stat last time, is the idea is that if you're able to contact a lead within 5 minutes of them converting, that your chance of contacting them increases by 900%.
Yeah, it's a Harvard business study that I actually saved on my bookmarks because it's not trucking specific and it's not a Randall Riley piece,
Right.
which I thought was, it's just, obviously a Harvard business study is a big deal.
Right.
And so, yeah, I have that study saved and an infographic. It's pretty impressive.
So what you kind of said kind of brought us back to just the efficiency of your recruiters. So let's get outside of that and say, okay, just from the lead standpoint, you got contact, volume. How many am I contacting? What is my volume, and what is my quality?
Quality, right?
Right. Which of those three have the biggest impact, or is it kind of different per fleet, or what would you say?
Just off the top of my head, I don't have notes. I would say that it's.
Is that your Amy Coney Barrett?
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. It would be the quality of the leads. How well is your partnerships with your vendors? I hate the word vendor, but partners in taking a look at leads by channel and the quality. We all know that it's difficult, and we've had issues where clients have said, my lead quality is poor, and the ability to have a communication with that client and improve it. Okay, what about these leads is poor? Are you able to contact them? Do they have enough experience? Are they outside of the hiring area?
Right.
So,
from what I understand, when you're talking about lead quality, a lot of those can be like you need to track your disqualification reasons, and some of those can be mitigated through knockout questions, right?
They can, except for phone calls.
Right.
So it depends on how heavy a client's phone call piece of the campaign is. But yes. I had an example of that from just last week where a client had 6 locations, and we didn't realize this at first. We were driving all the leads to one phone number.
Right.
And even the forms were just kind of going into a general location, and then they were divvying them out based off of either the area code that they put in the form or the call in. And we said, we can ask the question, hey, these are our 6 locations. Which area are you interested in?
Yes, please.
Again, helping on the speed to lead, so it's not going to one central place and then somebody else having to push it out for us.
Now, Randall Riley's been kind of doing some more stuff lately on, not to get too commercially here, but we've been doing stuff we recognize the, I guess, the potential there for having more quality within the leads. And so we've been working on a system that actually, I don't know if pre-qualifies is the right word, but essentially looks at some of those things that can disqualify a driver and knocks them out with looking at CDL verification, right?
Yes. Yeah, we're still beta testing that and looking at offering the driver to take a picture of their CDL, and that'll give us endorsement information. It'll give us CDL issue date,
right?
And then obviously, I think it causes a little bit more friction to where if the driver takes the time to pull out their CDL, take a picture of it, that he's more interested.
Gives you a little more intent there.
That's right. It's not necessarily that we're pre-qualifying them as much. It's just that we're making it a little bit more difficult. It's a fine line. You don't want to be too difficult and give them a full app on a mobile phone. They'll never do it. But if it's only 3 questions, it's a little too easy, and they apply to 30 carriers, and there's real no intent.
And like we said, anything that makes the recruiter more efficient, if he's spending more time with drivers who are interested and he knows they at least have the minimum qualifications, that's going to up your lead to hire ratio.
That's right. And again, good communication with the client and your vendors on ways to improve that is a big deal, because just talking through it and understanding the client's business. I think we failed last week on the example I gave, that we should have dug deeper and understood how they were going to manage the leads we sent.
Right.
Luckily, we caught it after a week or so, not 2 months.
Yeah.
But just understanding how their process works internally, I think, will help us structure the campaign better.
Okay. Going back over some of the stuff we talked about in episode 1. And the idea here is that a lot of people have shifted away from the idea of only focusing on cost per lead. Most people do focus on cost per hire, but within the realm of cost per hire, some people aren't necessarily looking at the whole story of what contributes to cost per hire.
Yeah.
With kind of the number one thing you should be looking at is probably your lead to hire ratio. Now, within lead to hire ratio, you can break that down a lot of different ways. By recruiter is very helpful, and you said probably maybe 10%, kind of your rough estimate. Only about 10% of fleets are actually doing that.
Yeah.
So that would be a great tip from today's episode, is if you can break down lead to hire by recruiter. And if you're trying to improve lead to hire so that your cost per hire goes down, then within the recruiting funnel, making your recruiters more efficient and better on the phone is kind of your number one place you need to look.
Right.
But then after that, maybe looking at lead quality, making sure, which still kind of goes back to your recruiters being more efficient because they're spending time with better leads.
Yeah, we did. We didn't talk about it a ton, but lead quality by channel.
Okay.
So that is a big piece that I do think sometimes, even our own team, we get caught up when you look at it and you see, I have one channel that's converting 1 out of 12 leads, which looks like a great lead to hire ratio. But if those leads are $100 a piece, that's still a $1,200 cost per hire.
I have no idea to be so much I won't pay it.
If I have another channel that's converting 1 out of 50 leads, but it's an $8 lead, you don't want to just discard it at first because it's 1 in 50. So to me, there still is value in digging a little deeper by channel. That's right. Good job. And looking at lead to hire ratio, but also the cost of that lead. So there is value in a lead closing at 40 to 50 to 1.
Right.
If it's not too expensive. So you're kind of diversifying. You probably need a little bit of both.
Yep. Alrighty. Well, I think we'll end that one there. If you have anything you'd like to see us do, write in. Tell us what you'd like to see. And that'll be it.
So what do you think of this new weekly report? I see it come out every Wednesday at 10.
I really like it, I think it's good information people can use. Fleets need that kind of trucking data, but, the host, the way he just reads the information just flows off the tongue. I really got up my hosting game when I look at that, Subpar.